Our next topic is introducing the concept of functions. But before we get up to that notion, we want to first establish the ideas of domain and range of a relation. In example 1, we're asked to identify the domain and range of each of these following relations. So by a relation, what we mean is all of the coordinate pairs contained inside this set of curly braces. That set of curly braces just groups those coordinate pairs together, and we refer to that as a relation. There's some relationship with the x and y coordinates happening here. So to identify the domain, what we want to do is identify all of the x values that exist in this relation. Since these are xy coordinate pairs, we just need to look pair by pair and write down the x values. So we have 5, -2, -10, 6, and 2. Then the range is just the list of all of the y values in that relation. We still just look at our coordinate pairs, and now we're identifying the y values, which would be -5, +5, -1, which occurs twice, but we don't need to list it twice, and -2. And there we have the domain and range of that first relation. We can do that for the remaining relations. In part B, we have -5, -4, -6, which is repeated, and then 10 as part of the domain of that relation. And then the range would consist of 0, -4, -10, which is repeated, and -8. In part C, our domain would be 10, which is repeated, 7, -2, and 6. And then our range would be 4, 9, -1, -6, and -10. In part D, our domain would be 4, which is repeated, -1, and 2, which is repeated. And then our range would be -1, 0, 5, and 2, which is repeated. And finally, in part E, we could once again identify the domain by looking at those x coordinates. We have -7, which is repeated, -9, which is repeated, and -8. And then we have a range, or we have the range, which would be -3, which is repeated, -7, which is repeated, and -4. There are different ways to represent a relation. In example 1, we had a list of coordinate pairs grouped together. We could also have a group of points on a coordinate plane. So now what we want to do in example 2 is identify the domain and range for each of these relations. To do that, we just look at each point and identify its x coordinate. So this would be -9, -5, -2, 1, and 6. And then the range for this first relation would be looking at the y coordinates. So we have -5, 7, 5, -1, and 3. Now, something to note here is it doesn't matter what order we list the domain and range in. They're paired together already on that graph. So once we're listing them out separately, there's not that paired relationship. We're just stating the x and y values. Oftentimes we would sort that list and have values go from smallest to largest. But for our purposes here, we're just identifying those values and putting them into a list, whether we sort that or not. For the second relation, we would again identify the x coordinates. This would be -6, 0, 2, and 8, which is repeated for both of these points. And then our range would be +4, 0, -1, -8, and -9. Again, this is the first step on this path towards building up what we mean by functions. Just identifying the x and y pairs, just identifying the x values and the y values that exist in that relation.